At what number does your job stop controlling your life? It's 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the cursor blinks expectantly on your laptop screen. Your laptop is open to a financial calculator app, an application you haven't dared to touch in 3 long years. The coffee beside you went cold 20 minutes ago, yet you remain motionless. Finally, you typed in the number that has haunted the back of your mind for months, $62,000, representing your annual salary. Now, the cursor waits, prompting the question you've avoided since you were 25. How much do you actually need to have invested to truly escape the need for this paycheck ever again? You don't know the answer. Nobody ever told you, not in school, not at work. Every financial guru online confidently declares $1 million as the magic number, presenting it as an undeniable fact, a settled truth that requires no further questioning. But something feels off. So tonight, you decided to put their math to the test yourself. You're questioning the widely accepted figure because when you ran your own numbers last week, something simply didn't add up. The calculations peddled by the online gurus didn't align with the stark reality reflected in your own bank account. This discrepancy fueled your resolve to uncover the truth for yourself. Tonight, you opened a real calculator, not an app, but a physical device. You were determined to meticulously figure out your financial situation, leaving no room for doubt or assumptions. You began by diligently typing in your monthly expenses. First, rent at $1,400. Then, your car payment of $380. Groceries amounted to $520, and utilities came to $190. Your phone bill was $90, and insurance added another $240. You also remembered the subscriptions you forgot to cancel, totaling $84. Finally, gas expenses were $200. Adding in miscellaneous costs, everything that subtly accumulates, brought another $700 to your monthly total. The grand sum for your monthly existence was $4,200. This meant a staggering $50,400 a year, simply to exist. You stared at the number, a chilling realization washing over you. You weren't living lavishly or wasting money. You were merely alive in the United States, and that alone demanded $50,400 annually to maintain your current state. The cost of basic survival was far higher than you had ever imagined. You took a slow sip of your now cold coffee, the bitter taste mirroring the truth you were confronting. The real question wasn't about how much you needed to retire. Instead, it was about the true cost of living without fear, of being truly free from financial anxieties. You had always believed the $1 million figure everyone promoted. The idea that $1 million would grant you freedom. But the calculator had just revealed a harsh reality that no YouTube guru had ever dared to mention. You were not free. A mere $1 million invested at a 4% safe withdrawal rate would only yield $40,000 a year. This was before taxes, before inflation, and certainly before any unexpected hospital bills. With your annual expenses at $50,400, $1 million would leave you a staggering $10,400 short of simply being alive. The finish line you thought you were sprinting towards was merely a checkpoint. You leaned back in your chair, the weight of the realization pressing down on you. You had been relentlessly chasing this elusive number for 10 years, making countless sacrifices along the way. You had turned down vacations, driven a car you despised for an extra 3 years, and eaten countless lunches at your desk. All for a goal that now seemed utterly miscalculated. You had done the math wrong, every single one of those days. The finish line you had envisioned was not a true end, but a deceptive marker. It didn't even cover your basic rent. Something deep in your chest went quiet, a profound shift occurring as the math irrevocably altered your perception of the future. You thought about your younger self, who started saving at 25. The version of you who postponed having a child because the financial stability wasn't quite there yet. The version who skipped a friend's wedding in Mexico because the flight was simply too expensive. The version who convinced himself it would all be worth it once that magical number was reached. You were closer to that number than ever before, yet the truth was far from what you believed. It wasn't the millionaires you were angry at, it was the cold, hard math itself. You stared at the cold coffee, the realization sinking in, you weren't almost free. You weren't even close. The question wasn't whether $1 million was enough. The true question was, what number genuinely replaces a life, accounting for all its unpredictable variables? With taxes, with inflation, with unexpected medical bills, and the inevitable car repairs you couldn't possibly predict. You began typing the real numbers into your calculator. The number you typed next would determine how many more years of your life you would owe to your job. The initial wave of despair lasted for a grueling 4 minutes. Then, a profound realization struck you, a truth that no one on YouTube had ever articulated: you don't need to replace your entire salary. You simply need to replace your bills. These were two fundamentally different numbers, one a daunting mountain, the other a manageable staircase. Your gross salary was $62,000, but after taxes, you took home $48,000. After your 401k contributions, your actual spendable income was $42,000. This was the real number you needed to replace if you were to walk away from your job tomorrow. Not the $62,000 gross salary. The number had just shrunk by $20,000 while you sat still, a silent revelation. You began running smaller numbers, focusing on individual bills. What if your investment portfolio could cover just one bill? Just one. Your phone bill, for instance, was $90 a month. To replace it forever, you'd need $27,000 invested. You stared at the screen, a flicker of hope igniting. You had $34,000 in your 401k. You stopped breathing for a second, a wave of disbelief washing over you. You weren't supposed to feel anything tonight except dread. Instead, you had just discovered that your phone bill was already paid for the rest of your life. Tonight, you were free of that. You had been free of that burden for 2 years, and nobody had told you. You ran the numbers for the next bill, your car payment, $380 a month. To replace it forever, you would need $114,000 invested. You didn't have that yet, but now you could clearly see the shape of the path ahead. Each bill represented a number, and each number was a door. And each door, once closed, would break a chain that had been wrapped around your job for the past 10 years. You didn't need $1 million to achieve freedom. You simply needed to start closing those doors, one by one. For the first time in a decade, the finish line stopped moving away from you. You began the real math now, the kind of math everyone avoids because it demands brutal honesty. Your total bills amounted to $4,200 a month, or $50,400 a year. To cover these expenses forever, your investment portfolio would need to reach $1,260,000. Not the mythical $1 million, but a more realistic $1.26 million. You felt the weight of that extra $260,000 settle somewhere in your stomach. But you kept going, driven by a newfound determination to face the truth. Because withdrawals from a 401k are subject to taxes. This meant you'd actually need to pull more than $50,400 to net $50,400 after taxes. The number on your screen jumped again, now to $1,575,000. It had grown by another $315,000 while you weren't even looking, a silent, relentless increase. You hadn't moved from the couch. Then, you added the one thing you had consistently avoided: inflation. In 30 years, your $50,400 wouldn't cover what it does today. It would pay for half, maybe even less. To truly survive that mathematical reality, the real amount you needed invested was closer to $1.8 million. This was the unvarnished truth, a reality no one on YouTube dared to tell you. The honest number wasn't $1 million, it was roughly $1.8 million for someone with your exact bills. Almost double the lie they had sold you. The laptop screen remained lit, its glow reflecting in your eyes as you simply stared, absorbing the magnitude of this new truth. You had done the real math for the very first time in your life, and the truth was now undeniably present, staring back at you from the screen. It was heavier than mere disappointment. You felt the weight of all the years you had spent believing you were almost there. The Friday nights you stayed in, the vacations you skipped, the version of you who believed the finish line was a mile away. when in reality, it was 2 miles. And that's when you remembered the door. You don't replace your entire life at once, you replace one bill, then another. The $1.8 million figure was the ultimate door at the end of the hallway, but there were many smaller doors to open before that one. You didn't need to walk through the last door tonight. You just needed to identify which door you were going to close first. You opened a new tab on your laptop, the savings calculator, the one you had deliberately avoided for 10 years. You carefully typed in your numbers: current portfolio $34,000, monthly contribution $500, average return 7%, and a target number of $1.8 million. You hit calculate. The screen landed on a year and age. You read it twice, then once more, just to be absolutely sure. Age 76. That's when you would reach $1.8 million at your current pace. You stared at the number until the screen blurred, the implications overwhelming. You were 32. You would retire at 76. That meant 44 more years of waking up at 6:30 in the morning. 44 more years of enduring quarterly reviews about goals that nobody ever truly hit. 44 more years of uttering a polite thanks, "I appreciate it," to a manager who barely remembered your name on weekends. The math was clear: you didn't have decades of freedom ahead, you had a sentence. You felt the anger rise within you, a raw emotion you couldn't yet name. It wasn't directed at yourself, but at every adult who had confidently told you that saving $500 a month would be enough. At every retirement calculator that hid the grim truth behind cheerful graphs. At every coworker who casually declared they'd figure it out later, as if later was just another Monday, a magical day when all problems would solve themselves. You bumped up your monthly contribution. First, to $1,000 a month, which brought your projected retirement age down to 64. Then, you pushed it further, to $1,500 a month. This brought your freedom age to 58. Finally, you bumped it to $2,000 a month, which projected your retirement at age 53. You stopped typing, the numbers a blur. The numbers had moved your freedom age 23 years closer, but you couldn't afford any of these increased contributions. $2,000 a month was half your take-home pay. It meant skipping the wedding you wanted to attend, not replacing the car you hated, and foregoing the trips you longed to take. It was giving up the next decade of being alive. All to buy a decade later of not having to work. You walked to the window, the street outside empty, reflecting your own somber expression in the dark glass. This was the trade-off nobody ever talked about: time now versus time later. Everyone eventually reaches their financial goals, but most people don't realize they're doing it. The number itself wasn't the problem, the years were. You walked back from the window, the cold reality settling in. You sat on the floor next to the couch. The chair felt too formal, too official, for the profound decision you were about to make. You opened the spreadsheet one more time, a final, resolute act. You began cutting things from your life, real things, things that truly mattered. The streaming services, $42 a month, gone. You would watch only what was free. The gym membership you enthusiastically signed up for in January, only to abandon in February, $35 a month, gone. You would find other ways to stay active. The takeout you ordered 3 times last week, a casual indulgence, $280 a month, gone. You would cook every night, even when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm you. The car you leased, instead of the more affordable used sedan, the difference of $180 a month, gone. You would drive a used sedan with a scratch on the door, and be content. The vacation you took every February, a cherished tradition, gone for the next 5 years. The new phone you upgraded every 2 years, gone. You would keep the cracked screen. The dinner with friends every Friday, a social lifeline, cut to once a month. The total savings from these cuts amounted to $850 a month, or $10,200 a year. This $10,200 would now go straight into your investment portfolio, instead of being spent on a life you couldn't truly afford. You ran the calculator again with these new numbers. The years collapsed in front of you. 29 of them, just gone from the sheer weight of your deliberate choices. You sat on the floor in the dark living room, feeling the trade-off. For the first time, you felt it not just in your head, but in your body. 29 years of your life back, in exchange for everything that made a Tuesday feel like more than just a Tuesday. You thought about the version of you who said yes to every dinner, every vacation, every upgrade. He was happy, but he was also destined to work until age 76. Then you considered the version who said no to all of it. He retired at 47, having spent 15 years declining everything that made him feel alive, just to buy back the rest of his life. Neither of them had it quite right. You realized you would have to find a third version of yourself, a balanced path. This third version started now. The one between saying yes to everything and saying no to everything. You decided to cut $500 a month, instead of the full $850. You would keep the February vacation. You would keep one dinner with friends a week. You would keep being a person, not a financial robot. You ran the numbers again with this balanced plan. The screen landed on a new projected freedom age, 54. You counted the years. 22 years. Not the fantasy of 47, nor the prison of 76. 22 years of deliberately doing the boring things, on purpose. You weren't buying a number anymore, you were buying a date. The street outside was empty. But 2 windows across the road were still lit. Other people were awake at 12:43 a.m., doing math they didn't talk about. The real number was never $1 million. The real number was 22 years. 22 years of saying no to things that didn't truly matter, so you could say yes to the rest of your life. You didn't close the laptop yet. The number, age 54, was still on the screen. It was 1:17 a.m. You thought about the person you needed to become to keep this promise to yourself. The man who says no on a Friday night when everyone else is going out. The man who drives the same car for 10 years, even if it has a scratch on the door. The man who skips the wedding in Greece because the flight is $1,400, and that's $1,400 the portfolio doesn't get. This was the commitment. You thought about the person you had to stop being, the one who finances things he can't truly afford, the one who keeps saying, "I'll figure it out next year." As if next year was a real person who existed, capable of solving all your problems. 22 years of saying no now, so you could say yes later. You thought about the man sitting here at 54. He would be somewhere with no alarm clock waiting for him, looking at a number that matched the one on your screen right now. He would have a portfolio that paid his bills forever, a calendar with no Mondays in it. You didn't know him yet, you could barely picture him. But you were about to spend 22 years diligently building him. You closed the laptop slowly, the screen fading to black. The room went dark, but you didn't feel free, not yet. But you felt something you hadn't felt in 10 years, you felt like you finally had a plan. Somewhere tonight, someone else is staring at a calculator with their salary on the screen. They believe the number is $1 million, because everyone told them so. They don't know the real number is almost double. They don't know the answer was never a dollar amount. The real answer was 22 years. 22 years of doing the boring thing on purpose, one door closing at a time, becoming the version of you your future self will recognize. Most people open the calculator, they see the daunting number, they close the laptop, and they never run the math again. But you did. The choice is being made at a kitchen table somewhere in the United States right now, by someone who looks a lot like you. Subscribe to this channel for more insights. The next decision you make will determine which version of you shows up at age 54. Will it be the one who chased fantasies, or the one who built a tangible future? The path to financial freedom is not about a magic number, but about consistent, deliberate choices. It's about understanding the true cost of your life and making a plan. It's about saying no to things that don't align with your long-term goals, so you can say yes to a future where you are truly free. This journey begins now. Every small decision, every conscious cut, every dollar saved, is a step towards that freedom. It's a commitment to yourself, to the person you want to become. The journey may be long, and it may require sacrifices, but the reward is immeasurable, the rest of your life, lived on your own terms, free from the chains of financial obligation. Embrace the math, embrace the honesty, and build the future you truly deserve. The power to change your life is in your hands, starting tonight.